Hello, friends, and welcome to Cinepile Saturday. We are here to discuss Aliens, the second movie in the Alien franchise. And I'm here with Anthony and Susanna. Anthony, will you start us off with an introduction?
Hello, yes. I have a YouTube channel that primarily hosts independent gaming. I've also written a couple of books, Birthday Treat, a dystopian novel, and Catbox, a collection and anthology of horror stories.
Nice. And Susanna.
Hello, my name is Susanna Imaginario. I'm a writer and sometimes YouTuber at Ten of the Weird.
Nice.
And I
You've
love
also
aliens.
you've also written some books too, right?
Yes, I'm a writer. Yeah, I've written some books. A whole series called Timelessness. First book in the series is Weird Gods, and you should check it out.
Nice. Have to be sure you guys don't forget to plug your books.
Always helps.
Yes. So Aliens, I think, is probably, I think, most people's favorite in the series. What do you both think?
Yes, definitely my favorite. It's one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. Really like it. But funny enough, I watched Aliens before I watched Alien. And I watched the theatrical version first,
Hmm.
which was quite unusual at the time. I don't know what sort of agreement the Portuguese channels had. And then years later, when it was on again, and I had a VHS recorder, it was that long ago, and I was ready to, record the movie. They just screened the uh, the theatrical version. The one that I saw was the director's cut. I'm sorry, and I was very confused because I remembered something completely different. I was like, "Where is the rest of the movie?" And yeah, it took me years because for a while I was thinking, well, maybe I imagined it because I was very young or something, and it took me years to realize that there was two versions. So,
Yeah, I mean, in the kind of sense of can a sequel surpass the original? I think there's only a kind of few movies that I can kind of probably count on both my fingertips. And Aliens is one of them. I mean, it's right up there. James Cameron does seem to have a way of making his sequels possibly better than the originals. I flip flop, to be honest with you. I sometimes like the old haunted house in space with Alien, and sometimes I just like the kick-assery of Aliens. So yeah, it's one of those ones where if I'm in the mood for a bit of suspense, then I can go for Alien. But if I'm just in the mood for having colonial marines run around in the dark, firing their pulse rifles, then it's definitely Aliens. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, Susanna, because the first time my first introduction to the Alien movies was they were running the extended cut on TV, and there had the extra scenes in it and it was with commercials, and so that's the first time and then I didn't see Alien until years later, and then it was a whole different experience because Aliens is like this action, science fiction action movie, and Alien is more of a science fiction horror, I think.
yeah, completely different genres. Yeah.
So rewatching these movies again and kind of looking at it with, kind of piecing things together. One of the first things we see is Ripley after she's found, is Ripley having nightmares. And I read the Alien 3 novelization, and they talk a lot about nightmares. So everybody who came in contact with the aliens had nightmares, and I wish they would expand on that more in the movies.
Why?
I think it'd be an
I mean,
interesting topic to kind of a fun thing to explore.
Yeah, I think in the novelization as well, in the first Alien book, they do talk about a lot about dreams. I think the introduction of the characters is about their dreams and how they dream, to kind of explain their characters a little bit. Like to say that the engineers, Brett and Parker, are like, they have more logistical type of dreams and stuff like that. So it's interesting actually that you bring that up, because yeah, you have her in cryosleep for, was it 57 years? there's going to be a lot of dreaming going on, I suspect, in those kind of 57 years. But they never. One of the things that I mean, I know it's kind of science fiction, so they can't really explain the kind of how cryo sleep works and whatnot, because it would kind of, dampen the whole kind of thing. But it would be interesting to kind of find out, because I mean, obviously at the start of the film, we find Ripley and Jonesy in the cryo sleep chamber, and at the end of the film, we have Hicks, Ripley, Newt, and even Bishop sort of thing in their cryo sleeps, and it has that kind of like lingering kind of moment as the Newt's face kind of melds into the kind of space in the moon and everything like that. And that's kind of one of those, I think, little signature things that have been passed on in all the kind of mainly of the films. I'm not sure about Alien Resurrection, but they do have the kind of, when the start of the film, they'll have the kind of dark moon coming round to kind of foreshadow the nightmare that's about to unfold. And I think they've kind of carried that on through most of the franchise, at least. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, that's interesting. Yesterday, I watched it again yesterday because, of course, I had to. Always an excuse. And so I was speaking at all the details for the discussion. It's a completely different way to watch the movie. And towards the end, the little bit with the Queen and the interaction that she has with the other aliens, drones, soldiers, whatever you want to call them, and it kind of make me wonder if they were telepathic, because they don't speak. They have very little, facial expressions or mouth expressions. Let's put it this way. But I kind of wondered if they would be telepathic. And now you mentioned dreams, and I'm here thinking, maybe on some level, maybe. Because, of course, encountering a creature like that would probably give you nightmares regardless. But if there was something else going on, some lingering effect of being exposed to their telepathy, would be something to explore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be a good sort of justification to have, like, this perfect organism, not just kind of mentally scarring you, but mentally mind hacking you and sort of getting into your brain. That would be that's not actually something that I've ever thought about, to be honest with you. But I mean, Susanna, you do mention that the Queen, that there does appear to be some kind of telepathic or telekinetic sort of presence between them, because obviously when Ripley and Newt stumble into the Queen's nest sort of thing, there is a kind of moment where the Queen is like, telling her drones to kind of back off. And I think in the Dark Horse comics, it's even more, there's more information about their kind of biology in that respect as well. So I've always kind of felt that there has been some kind of telepathic connection or pheromonal connection between the aliens themselves. I mean, they work like it's very prominent in Aliens that they're kind of made out to be like more like bees. They even have a kind of like Hudson and Vasquez kind of even have that conversation, like, bees, man, they're big bees. So and the kind of the hive, it works, the whole colony works for the Queen. So it's a very kind of connection with the representation of having kind of bees or insects with the kind of the main goal to kind of supply for the Queen. So
It is almost like when Ripley points the flamethrower at the eggs, the Queen is intelligent enough to know what kind of like, you can kill us, but we'll, So it was an interesting dynamic between her and the Queen. They have this understanding, at least for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then the Queen tried to cheat, and Ripley was like, "Oh no, you won't."
Yeah, so I guess since we're on the topic of the Queen, how do you both feel about in Alien? Humans are transformed into an egg, and in Aliens we have the Queen in a whole different setup. I know Cameron, I think, added the Queen. He wanted to add that different dynamic. What are your thoughts on what do you prefer?
Oh, the Aliens version, yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes a more logistical kind of concept, especially with the creatures themselves, of how they kind of reproduce. Like with the kind of original Ridley Scott version, when the kind of metamorphosis of person into egg, that did seem a little bit too cosmic, I think, for the actual franchise, like, or for the actual film in that respect. And that's the reason why they kind of cut that scene, along with pacing issues. And as Susanna, like as you mentioned there, like depending on what version you see first, you might be sort of scratching your head thinking, wow, like, you know, if you saw the director's cut version, you saw like Hadley's Hope, and you saw New before the nightmare begins, and then you have the infamous like gun turret scene as well. And there's even a deleted scene from that where they see Burke, he's impregnated, and Ripley comes past him with some grenades and basically tells him, you know, you can end it yourself. But yeah, no, I prefer the eviscerator kind of laying of the eggs. It just kind of makes it a bit more. It gives that creature just a little bit more emphasis, I guess. Like this, if you have a queen that can lay thousands of eggs, then, you know, you could potentially have thousands of impregnated victims as well. I think changing into the egg makes you, it is more powerful an image, I guess. It gives you more nightmarish sort of undertones. Whereas the anchor of reality in that respect for the series, goes with the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it makes sense to at least have that at the beginning, where they transform into eggs to get a queen, because you need to have the eggs to have the queen. So I guess they could get it started with transforming people, and then you get the queen, and then the queen hatches the eggs. So,
and it opens up that question: which came first, the chicken or the alien? You know, it does.
Well, the question is, where did the egg in Alien 3 come from? But yeah, never. That's for next discussion.
Yeah,
it's a fun one. And then I wonder if the queen jumped on the ship at the end just to leave that open, to have that possibility of the queen laid the egg, you know.
Yeah, but
she carried one under her arm. She had it under her armpit.
Because she had all that. I don't even know how to call it. Reproductive system going on. I mean, you could see the eggs being formed inside the tube. So then she had one ready already just in case. Like, considering that it's going to be a queen, maybe she had like a backup queen that didn't need to go through the whole process. Anyway, I'm digressing. Like a little clone.
Yeah, it was. And I guess, so that kind of, yeah, we'll get into that next time for the next one. But there's a whole other thing. So I think we learn a lot about Ripley, and the company doesn't believe her when they find her, or at least they claim not to believe her. And they almost trap her into having to go back again to get her status back.
Yeah, I really do like the way the character arc pans out in this one. Obviously, when she's in the Weyland-Yutani with the corporate stooges, and they're essentially telling like her that, you know, you basically were responsible for the Nostromo being blown to pieces, and that's a multi-million-pound ship sort of thing. They kind of dock her down, like she's working in the kind of the docks, kind of working the power loaders. We see that, you know, when Gorman and Burke arrive at her little flat, I like it's like little nuances that are put in there. Like there's graffiti on the walls. You can tell that wherever she's living is a bit of a rundown area. You know, she's not doing very well. And as you said, Steve, they kind of, you know, they give it this once in a lifetime opportunity that she can get a flight license reinstated if she goes along with the Marines to kind of check out LV-426. It could be just a down transmitter, but, you know, wouldn't be much of a film if they just turned up there and Ripley was like, yep, just a down transmitter, let's go back. And now I'm back to my full form warrant officer title on the next starship. But yeah, no, it's a great way. I think it was realistic in that respect. You can, you know, if you have the Weyland-Yutani group as this kind of evil corporation, mega conglomerate type of thing that we see now, like, you know, the message is still kind of fundamentally clear that the big, large companies don't have your best interests at heart.
Yeah. So did they need her? Okay. So I have some questions about, did they know for sure that the ship was there? Because they sent the Nostromo to find the beacon. So I'm guessing the company knew the ship was there, and then the Nostromo disappears or is destroyed. So
yeah.
Why did it take them so long to send the settlers to the ship if it was close enough to where wouldn't they have known the ship was there before they found Ripley?
I think you could sort of say this is a bit of a plot hole, but in the director's cut, it does kind of make sense because I don't believe. Well, yeah, I mean the company obviously knew that the derelict ship was there in the first place. That's why they set the Nostromo there. I would like to think that they probably did send the colonists there to kind of set up Hadley's Hope in the kind of hope, no pun intended, that one of the colonists finds the derelict ship, brings back an alien, and then the kind of company will know and sort of set it up. They obviously lived there for 50 years or whatever. No one's come across the derelict ship until Newt's family, the Wildcatters, are going off to prospect essentially, and they come across it. They obviously give the radio back to Hadley's Hope, and they make the transmission, and that's when Burke gets involved. Then, so Burke sends them to that location. That's the whole thing, like when they have the confrontation with Ripley and Burke. So yeah, I suspect that it's kind of in the background. That kind of information's in the background. It's not really you're not meant to think about it too much. But I would suspect that the company knew all along that this derelict ship was there, and maybe they were just kind of like trying to get people up to speed and go like, well, we've had this colony here for a while and we haven't had any reports of any alien activity, so I think we're just going to give you a nudge in the right direction, see if you can find this derelict ship.
Well, I do think it's a plot hole because on one hand you could say, yes, you can say that it's a whole planet. Even though they were there for decades, they might not stumble across a ship in the whole planet, especially that kind of planet. But if they caught on the beacon, there was nothing that turned it off. So they still had the beacon. If they were really interested in know what was there, they would have sent someone. But yeah, then that would be a completely different story.
Yeah, I guess you're right. The beacon would have still been going on, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So I always looked at as a plot hole, but it never bothered me so much.
No.
I guess there was no reason to have that jump, that 57-year jump. Did it make that much difference technology-wise? We didn't know what sort of technology they had. I mean, they had good enough technology to go and mine in space. So I guess that would be enough. I don't know what was the thought process there.
I think, maybe it's the 57 years would be to establish the fact that since the first film, this was like a barren planet. And then you have this kind of colony that come in to kind of set up, and it would, feasibly, you could sort of say it took them 57 years to get to the point where they are with the atmosphere processes and whatnot. It also adds that emotional impact as well, because we find out once again in the theatrical cut, the director's cut, not the theatrical cut, that Ripley has a daughter, and now she's obviously she died while she was sleeping for 57 years. So it gives it that. I think there were some really weird decisions of what they cut. I think in the theatrical version, the whole emphasis of Ripley in Aliens is that although she's kicking ass and taking names, she has that kind of paternal, that motherly paternal instinct, and it just resonates so much more knowing that. Imagine being absent for the majority of your daughter's life. I think she says she promised that she'd be back for her 11th birthday, and then she comes back. And funnily enough, the actual photo of the old lady is Sigourney Weaver's mother, sort of thing as well. So there's a nice little touch there. But it just kind of gives it more gravitas, I think, for that reason as well, to kind of then foreshadow later on that she will protect Newt at all costs, sort of being the absentee mother of that. Now she's going to be the surrogate mother of Newt, and that once again ties in with the whole Queen aspect as well, with the kind of the female power struggle there as well. So I think that one of the reasons for that.
So how much about her going back for Newt was about Newt, and how much of it was her pain of missing out on her daughter's life?
I guess it was a bit of both. She connected with the girl, but of course there was, she had that emotional hole in her life, and it made perfect sense.
And you actually, like, throughout the kind of whole film, like there's a lot of films out there that have tried and failed to kind of encompass that same sort of relationship that Ripley has with Newt. You believe, like in a lot of films, that you can see a kind of maybe an estranged parent trying to reconnect with their son or daughter, and you find that, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In this one, although a lot is going on, you know, you have the kind of whole Vietnam sort of like allergy sort of thing going on. You have the Ripley reconnecting with a kind of absent daughter sort of thing with through Newt and everything. But you do believe it. You believe it wholeheartedly, that she will do anything and everything to kind of make sure, you know, we have the kind of scene when the Marines go in and find the nest for the first time, and Ripley says, like, you can't help them, they're being cocooned just like the others. And then later on, when they have like 12 minutes left before the whole atmosphere processor explodes, she's like resolutely, no, she's still alive, I know it in my bones, kind of thing. So she goes to find her and to bring her back.
I love that she never lies to Newt. That's a very good. She never. Yeah, she never lies about the situation or how she feels about things when they are trapped in a laboratory, and then Newt says, "I'm scared." They say, "Me too." She doesn't play strong. She understands that Newt understands to some degree, even though she's protective of her. She treats her almost like an adult. All the relationships in the movie are great. I also love the if it called romance between her and Hicks, how the two most capable characters kind of gravitated toward each other. I think it was very subtle and very well done. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like just in the case of at the very end, like you have this simmering sort of tension between the two. There is chemistry there, and it's exactly what you said, Susanna. It's like, you know, they have a mutual, like Hicks is the kind of reluctant sort of hero in this one. You know, he's the corporal when it all goes foobar sort of thing in the nest. He is, by the chain of command, the one who's meant to lead. And then you have Ripley, who, you know, didn't want to be there in the first place, has now taken on this mantle of being like the one who knows what's going on. And together you see their chemistry. And at the towards the end, they just do it. It's a very simple, there's one of the reasons why I like Cameron script. You know, he can stop doing these Avatar films. We don't need any more Avatar films. Come back into the Alien franchise. He wrote Ripley like very well. Like he, you know, a lot of the films that he had strong female characters. And, you know, we're living in an age now where to be a strong female character is to almost have all the power and not, you know, realize the kind of what's going on. It's not how you write good characters. He's written Ripley, and Sigourney Weaver herself has even said that, you know, it's a kind of hard character to write for. You know, she is a badass kind of thing, but it's through her decision making, it's through her logic that makes her this character. She doesn't want to be there. Like, you know, she's fundamentally this person who's put in this situation and she's dealing with it, much like the first film. Like, she was the kind of the bookish person, tick boxing, do it by the book, and by the end of it she had to adapt to the environment and had to adapt to survive. And that's exactly what she's doing again here. It's just in a different way now. So yeah, when they kind of give each other's names, when he's like, you know, Ellen, and that's the first time we really find out her name, and then he goes Dwayne. You know, it's a really small, subtle thing there, but it just kind of encompasses the fact that they have this shared mutual respect for each other now, that they can actually give each other their first names, because, like, you know, in these type of films it's always by the surname in a kind of military style. You know, even in the first one it was all the kind of characters, they're on this vessel, this starship, whatever it may be. And I guess it's like the Navy or something like that. You refer to each other as, like, you know, mine would be Self kind of thing and stuff like that. It wouldn't be Tony, it wouldn't be Anthony, it'd just be Self, let's do this. So having that little moment at the end really does make you feel bad that in the third film they're just offed unceremoniously. But there you go.
I can't express or stress just how much characters like Ellen Ripley and in Terminator Sarah Connor, they did to women of my generation, to girls of my generation growing up, where, you know, especially in sci-fi, it was always either like the femme fatale or they were fine, but they weren't exactly relatable. It was something that you would masquerade on Halloween, you know, like Catwoman or whatever. But these two, Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor, they just, what they did girls that didn't quite fit the girly girl profile growing up. It was amazing. Like Ellen Ripley is one of my role models. Sigourney Weaver, actually, I love even in Ghostbusters. Yeah, now so much different than all the Hunger Games and the Captain Marvels of the world, and oh, just no, that's that's offensive to any woman with a capital W. But that's just me.
Yeah, it is. It's a big difference. And then you hear people like
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence say, "Well, I'm the first action.
Yeah.
No
Oh,
one's been cast in an
yeah.
action movie before." Yeah.
Not the first, and far from the best. Yeah. No, the really that's how you write a strong female character in every way. Yeah. You don't even need big muscles. I like Vasquez as well. I was always jealous of her muscles, and another example of how you can be strong and still feminine. You don't have. Yeah, so well done, and people just forgot about it. They're doing it all wrong.
And I did like the touch where when they're on their way to LV-426, that the Marines are kind of they're really cocky and like, oh, just tell me where they are, and no one believes her, and she's trying to warn all of them, and kind of her story is on file, and they all kind of just, okay, yeah, whatever. And then they come around to her really being the de facto leader of the group after everything happens, is she kind of in a very subtle way, her and Hicks become not even so much Hicks. I think Ripley holds everybody together in a kind of a subtle way. She's the glue that holds that crew together until they all start dying. But she couldn't help that.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's the writing that when they first wake up from their cryo sleep chambers, and Hicks is like, I guess the new lieutenants to sit with us grunts, and like she's sitting with the other Bishop and Gorman and whatnot, the higher uppers, if you will, and then later on, it's that kind of small assimilation of how she kind of takes sort of little pieces of information, and then they start coming together as a kind of like, as you said, like a tight-knit group sort of thing. And there's what's the scene in particular I'm thinking of? Oh yeah, when she's explaining what the alien is on the Sulaco, and she's saying, like, Kane was in this, we were having dinner, and she gets choked up because she's obviously reliving the memory for her that was probably like a couple of days ago. And then the emotional range changes when Vasquez says, just tell me where they are, and she's like, oh, I hope you're right, I really do, because if one of these things just managed to wipe out my entire crew. And it's that kind of dynamic shift that Ripley embellishes, as the fact that she can go from like vulnerable to kind of steadfast and hardy, and like the kind of flick of a switch kind of thing, because she knows what the kind of situation is. She knows what the terror is awaiting them on LV-426. So.
Yeah, I like that. There's always
they had no idea.
Yeah, no idea. And of course, Bill Paxton's character, he's the, I think it's nice to have someone who loses their shit, just like who just can't hold it together, because I think most people wouldn't, right? I mean, most people would fall apart, and I mean, I probably would. I mean, if there's these aliens coming in to get me and they're knocking down doors, and I think it's nice to have, not everyone holds it together. You're going to have people who just lose it. I mean, I think
I'd definitely be a Hudson. There is that one line I love where it's almost like I got 2 more days until retirement, and he's like, 4 more weeks and out, and like as soon as he said that, he's not going to last the rest of the movie, unfortunately. But he has his little bit at the end where he kind of finds his spirit and his backbone, and he comes back blasting, man. So I love Hudson, and he's obviously got the most famous quote out of the whole film as well, which was apparently improvised at the time. But game over, man, game over. I mean, how many times has that been used?
It was improvised?
Apparently so, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Not mostly.
Mostly at night, mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly. No, I have. It was so well written, like from the beginning when they wake up. That whole scene, it's one of my favorites, because it just I don't know how long the scene is. It's like 5 minutes tops, but you get a sense of the personality of everyone involved and the dynamic between them. So well written, so well done, and you kind of from there you kind of almost guess who's gonna survive or not. Then when everything goes wrong later on, and yeah, but so well written that I went with it just almost taking notes. Is this the best characterization ever?
Yeah,
Talk
I mean,
about bringing a character to line just one line.
it's one of the most perfectly paced films. Like, as I think I mentioned this before in another chat we had, sort of thing, Steve. But like what James Cameron did very well back then was to have his exposition dumps done like during a chase or something, like in the Terminator when Carl Reese is with Sarah Connor and they're having a car chase. So you're already watching action unfold on the screen, and that's where he's given his dialogue about why he's there, what the Terminator is to Sarah Connor. Like, you know, you're mixing two things where you could have a lot of, you know, directors would have probably just had them talking face to face and it would have been a boring scene. And he does the same thing in Aliens, like, you know, when they're on the dropship coming down and like, you know, Hudson's, like, as you said, Steve, is like they're getting cocky and arrogant, and that showcases in the fact that they're dropshipping down to this planet. I think there's the only kind of, I'd say, slow paced element of this is possibly when they've are setting up camp in the HQ in the medical bay and whatnot, and you know they're just kind of fortifying themselves essentially. But even that is still like tense. I don't think there's any moment. There's no fat in this film. It's all lean. It's all like it's just even with the theatrical cut that you watch or the director's cut that you watch. You know, there's so much information that you can gather here. Like in the director's cut, where you see Newt and a family, that's tension. That's when, you know, you see them going out to, and you find out about Newt, and you find that she can crawl into spaces that no one can get to. When you have the gun turret scene, it is purely action, but it showcases the fact that they've literally at that point then have got themselves to defend themselves. They don't have these automated turrets, and it showcases the fact how many thousands of these aliens are there. And I think that's the pinnacle of this one as well. I mean, I think back then you could have just had like Alien 2, the sequel, but they, you know, just by adding an S onto the end of a title, it just makes it so much more impactful. So yeah, it's one of the most kind of perfectly paced films I think that I've seen for a long time. Yeah.
And just how they build the tension. My husband was watching with me, and he pointed out the countdowns, on the rounds and then the guns, and how effective that was for tension, and along with the motion detectors, just the beeping, you know, they're closing in, just adds up. And that's, I think it came a bit from Alien. They have the motion detectors, but they bring it up another level. Same with the scenes inside the vents. They made it a lot better, but in a completely different genre, I think, because like we talked about in the first movie, it was all the bad decisions. No one was equipped to deal with something like that. You know, they were supposed to be hunting this creature and ended up being the ones hunted. In Aliens, they have a team with all the guns, all the expertise, etc. They're supposed to be prepared, and then they are outnumbered and outsmart, and just, yeah, everything goes wrong. But it works so well. It wouldn't work if it was a team of scientists. Oh, and now we're going to study this alien ship properly, and they were not equipped and just be annihilated. It'll be like, yeah, what did you expect? But because they went there technically to kill them or save someone, and they were all equipped, and they still, you know, their asses got kicked, as you know, as Hudson said, and brilliant.
You know, in the age of a 2.5 hour movie, you know, I think 2.5 hour movies are kind of the norm now. You know, in modern day, you know, I don't think most people blink at a 2.5 hour movie. Whether that's a good or bad thing is a whole nother topic. But I think if this would have been made now, I don't think they would have cut all those scenes, because the turret scene,
Yeah.
like you said, it builds a lot of tension, and it tells you how intelligent they are, because they recognize that, okay, there's this thing stopping us. We need to find another way in. And they find another way in from coming on top. So I think there's a lot that we learn in that scene. And plus the daughter, I mean, it's wild to me they cut that scene, because it adds so much to Ripley's character, knowing that she lost her daughter, and the things that she, the life that she lost out on. She's almost like her life is over. She has nothing. She has nothing left.
No, there was this idea of, you have to, start the action as soon as possible, otherwise the audience would get bored. And I completely disagree that, you need the setup. That's it's almost like foreplay. You need some foreplay before you get to the action, because it's better that way. But they just cut everything that had any emotional meaning and any anything that ended up being relevant throughout the movie, just to get to, okay, let's start shooting things and let's start seeing people get killed. I guess that's what the audience wanted at the time, which is sad. But
Well, I
I'm
think,
glad
yeah,
that they
it's.
kept the director's cut.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, I once again, like talking about the writing, you're introduced to this bunch of characters. Unfortunately, we don't get to see all the Marines because a lot of them die off quite quickly, quite fast when they get to the reactor. But you're it's such an ensemble cast. It's always hard to give how much screen time can you give one person. But what they do there is even with the, I guess, to the extent of the actors were able to actually kind of, with their armor, they were able to actually put their own sort of graffiti on it and stuff like that, just to give them a bit of gravitas and whatnot. So like Vasquez is like on her smart gun, she's got the adios thing, and like with Hudson, I think he had his girlfriend at the time. He had her name on his breast chest plate. Michael Biehn, unfortunately, because I don't know how much you're aware of like the production of what went on, another horror show apparently, sort of thing, of course, of any Cameron film. But Michael Biehn wasn't originally as Hicks, so by the time he came on board, the other actor, whose name I forget off the top of my head, but he played what's his name in a very, very well-known guy. His name's off the top of my head. I'll look into it in a second. But so he already had his armor, the graffiti on it, sort of thing. So he had to take on
Personalized.
this personalized armor. The other actor had to take on this other guy's what he'd written, sort of thing. So it's just one of those like minute things again that you don't get in films nowadays. And I think all the actors, all the Marines went to boot camp and all. And I know that's kind of, if you're doing a war film or you're doing something like that, a lot of directors will send their actors off to boot camp to get trained. But yeah, it just once again adds just that layer that you don't see. Like you see it on the screen, obviously, you see all these kind of actors interact with each other, but it's the kind of the subtle stuff that goes on behind the scenes that just effectively make it more impactful as a performance. But yeah, as I said, with all these kind of characters that you've got, Burke, the cowardly corporate stooge. You have Hudson, who's the kind of wants to get out of there, sort of Vasquez, the badass sort of thing. Gorman, who is inexperienced, but is trying to lead these group of ragtag soldiers. They're just all well defined. Yeah.
And the actor you're referring to is William James Remar.
Remar, that's the one.
The Warriors.
The Warriors, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine him as Hicks, though.
No.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really funny as well because he's actually in the film. There's a scene when they first come into the hive, and I think Cameron was trying to get more money for effects and whatnot. And when he showed like the production people, or whatever you call them, he was like, if you can see where the effects is and stuff like that, and they couldn't, and he was like, well, then I've done my job, because the best kind of visual effects are the ones that you don't see, kind of thing, in a weird way. It's that kind of crafty thing of like the best kind of visual effects are the chameleon ones that you're seeing but you don't sort of see. Like there's that uncanny valley when you see like CGI in certain films and stuff like that, and your brain just automatically detaches from what's going on. But if you do it really well, then it's done its job, really.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I wondered, why wasn't Bishop aware of what the plan was? Is it because they knew what happened last time and they didn't want Bishop knowing, because he might reveal what they planned? Because Burke is in control, so I guess maybe they depended on Burke more than they did on Bishop. So I guess they had more trust that Burke would follow through with the plan and do what needed to be done more than Bishop. So interesting option there, or choice there.
I thought it was, like you said, it was his programming. He was programmed differently. He would never allow a human being to be harmed or even by inaction. So they couldn't trust him that way.
I think it was, well, it's a bit of it's the red herring, isn't it? They're trying to sort of set up the audience to kind of make you think, can he be trusted? Because there's one scene in particular where he's examining the face hugger from the cryo tubes, and Spunkmeyer comes in to give him some cargo or whatever, and he goes, is that all? And he's like, and you have this, there's that moment of like we had in Ash in the first film, where there's just that kind of like, we know now through hindsight that there's a robot. They kind of instantly take that equation out. They say like it's a dead person. Like you find out that Bishop, when he's doing the knife game, which I forget the name of now, cut his fingers or whatever. But we know that Bishop straight off the bat is an android or a synthetic person. And that already then makes you think, oh wow, well, with Ash last one, he was a bad guy, right? So I think there was an element that they were trying to linger. They were trying to make the audience think that, is he someone that can be trusted? Is he the bad guy? And it turns out, no, it's actually the opposite. He's actually he's a good guy. So in that respect, yeah, I think whether Burke was able to, it's an interesting one. Could Burke have reprogrammed him to help him in his mission to impregnate Newt and Ripley? Who knows?
I mean, Burke was such a red herring from the very beginning. If I have any complaints about the movie, is one, Newt screaming. It's like the most high-pitched, annoying screaming in cinema. And two, Burke's character. I mean, just his body language, and thumbs up to the actor. Everything is mannerisms, body language. You knew he could not be trusted. It's almost offensive to Ripley that she kind of trusted him in the beginning, but I guess she had no one. She'd have to lean on. She knew no one that had to.
For me, it was the futuristic sort of pop color. When he first comes in, I don't know why they haven't made those yet. Why we don't have these like weird like suits that have like the little collars that are inbuilt. I love that. I think I'd get one right away.
Good point. Yeah.
I think though his character is played off beautifully, sort of thing, like in terms of when they're first coming down to the atmosphere processors, and he's like, oh, we built those, and like there's all that kind of capitalist sort of like he's talking about the multi-millions and whatnot, and then as the film goes on, like he's even that's the one, he risks himself by trying to get the company the biological weapon that they want, in the respect that he knows what's going on. He's had like Ripley's report that one of these things was able to wipe out her entire crew. He's sent. Maybe he just thinks that he's going in with the troops, so he's going to be safe. He's adapting once again, like he's like in that respect, we were having the analogies with the kind of the creatures and whatnot. He's adapting to his environment by like seeing he's got these two face huggers, these two live face huggers. He's got these two women here, and it's like, I think what I can do here, and then. Ripley breaks it down when before they cut the power, before the aliens cut the power. He's like, he could sabotage your cryo tubes. He could make up any story he wanted and get us through ICC quarantine. And it's like, wow. If that was the plan, I would have loved a multi-universe, a kind of different universe where Burke actually got his plan done, and like how that would have gone, because that. It's Machiavellian, like it's kind of twirling the mustache type villainy going on here, but I love that,
No, it was very naive. I mean, but he was so patronizing to her. I mean, I don't think the way I see it is that he did not quite believe that it was as bad as she put it. It's just this poor woman, being such a traumatic experience, and she just exaggerated everything. And he thought, I have all these guys protecting me and I can do whatever I want. It will be fine. He had no idea.
Yeah. I know when sorry, go on, Steve.
No, I was saying it was a good plan that he was going to freeze them so he wouldn't have to deal with the aliens. That made more sense. Because in the first film they talked about, why don't you freeze him? Why don't you freeze? And I guess knowing what they know now, they probably would have just frozen him and then dealt with it later. I did chuckle a little bit when Ripley confronts Burke, and Burke is like, "This it's worth millions to the bioweapons division." It's like it's like trillions, right? I guess in 2023 terms, it's like it's kind of funny to say it's worth millions. Now corporations like, oh, millions, no big deal. But you would imagine now it'd be, it's worth trillions because that kind of weapon, to study and to evolve, to develop and to use. So you could wipe out you could do so much with that.
Yeah, and I think that's what when the TV series begins. I think that's what it's going to focus on as well. It's going to be the actual the corporation and like the people that work within the corporation. So it'll be interesting to kind of see that element at play as well. But I love, like, once again, just going back to Burke sort of thing, like with the sliminess of his character, like when Ripley does confront him and he turns it on a dime, doesn't he? He tries to get her into his kind of plot. He's like, we could come away from this heroes. We can come with the rich. We don't have to worry about anything anymore in our lives. And of course, Ripley's character is above the dollar mark sort of thing. So she's like, you killed all these people, you killed all these colonists, you sent them out there, you knew it. But that's Burke's character. He's just like, if I can't, he had a plan originally. He can see his plan sort of being foiled, and he tries to bring in people into his like little kind of stooge club, I guess. And he's like trying to say to them, well, if you can't be like, try and join them, and like but she won't have any of it, sort of thing. So that's when his decision is made to try and impregnate them both with the facehuggers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did you both feel? Because we talked about, I think we talked about it last time. What do you feel about the whole humans are worse thing? Because we talked, she talks about, well, you don't see them fucking each other over for a percentage. Like, how do you feel? Is it better to leave it where we're all, the humans are, because I think a lot of zombie stories go that direction. Like, I think humans are worse. The zombies really aren't really the villain. It's the humans. So what did you both feel about that decision?
I was literally just about to say the same thing, like with The Walking Dead, when you have, I guess, and that's why Ridley Scott, I think, sort of turned away in Prometheus from the actual beast, because once again, I think I said this in the last one, when you have like a creature like this, at the time, it's terrifying. It's one of the most terrifying creature features that, obviously, Geiger's design and whatnot. But then after a couple of years, you become desensitized to it. So then you need that other element, that play, which is the kind of that humans are worse than, this nightmarish creature. And you see it. Well, I think why people can relate to that kind of thing is because we see it every day in our working lives. People get thrown under the bus in all walks of life, in all different kind of areas and whatnot, sort of thing. So when you see that kind of thing of like, The Walking Dead, where, zombies at the, look at the first series compared to like one of the later series, they just become a number now. So you have to have the human element in play. You have to have the espionage. You have to have the sabotage, and you have to have the characters that make it, elevate it above what it is. And I think to a certain extent, you do have that in Aliens. The creature designs are very different from the original alien creature from the first film. They give them more of a the headpieces and whatnot. They give them more of a kind of I don't know what it's not animalistic as such kind of thing, but they're given a different look. And it's, as you said, like, it's the people, it's Burke, it's the company, it's stuff like that are actually fucking over Ripley and the soldiers. When he turns around and goes, "You're just a grunt. You can't make that kind of decision." It just kind of it's a class sort of battle, really, in that kind of respect, is what you'd have it. And that's why I think that the people that are watching it will relate to that in some respect, because I think at some point in all our lives we've had some kind of either class or some kind of race or whatever it may be, sort of hierarchy or level playing field that is, you find out, and it's just one of that part of life, I guess, in that respect, that you kind of, how do you deal with that? And we see Ripley dealing with it in the way that she knows best. She uses her logic, and she uses her cunning, and she uses her kind of attributes to elevate herself above it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was unfortunate. We talked about this in the last episode. We finally had a monster, a proper monster that was completely independent from humanity, and then you had to make it about humans being the monsters. It's true. It's true. A very good point. It's just kind of diminished a little bit, in my opinion. The aliens. It's almost insulting to the alien, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, have you been paying attention? I bleed acid for blood. Come on.
Exactly.
The new yelling, I don't mean to, it's child actor, but it's like, wow. I mean, someone had to tell, like, okay, like, let's change the pitch or do something different, because she does just stand there and just scream an awful lot. So, and I'm not trying to pick on a child actor or anything, but it's pretty bad. It's just
Yeah.
one of the worst parts.
I love some of her sass though as well, like when Ripley, like Susanna, you mentioned before that Ripley talks to her like an adult. I think the only one moment where she doesn't is when she's like, "Oh, Casey, her plastic Barbie doll head or whatever it is."
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, I bet Casey doesn't have nightmares," and like Newt just turns around. She doesn't have nightmares, Ripley, because she's plastic.
Exactly.
There is,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny as well because when we're first introduced to her, Gorman is trying to sort of get information out of her, and she's in this kind of catatonic type state, and it's like Ripley's the one who's turning around saying to her like, "Give it a rest, Gorman," right? And then she's like uses that kind of. There's a very tender moment where she's like, "Oh, got a bit of hot chocolate on you. I'm gonna have to wipe this all now." But yeah, she does scream a lot. I think there's like 3 times when she's waiting for Hicks and Ripley to do the flashlight thing to get underneath the girders. The other bit where she's cocooned. Yeah, there's a lot of screaming going on.
I guess the screaming does save her life at the end, so maybe that's what it was about. Because otherwise, Ripley may not have found her, because she finds the tracker and
the
then
tracker. Yeah,
she doesn't know Newt's short distance away until she screams her signature scream.
Yeah, I suppose.
I think another element of the sorry, go on, Steve.
Oh no, it was just the face hugger scene when they're trapped in the lab. That's a great scene. The two of them trapped and they have no weapons. It's just the two of them trying to maneuver through the room. And where do you stand? Do you back up against a wall? How do you deal with 2 little crawling face huggers that are trying to impregnate you?
Well,
Yeah,
you
and once
protect
again,
your face. You don't stand in the middle of the room. They had it, well, first they were against the wall, and if I would face the glass. I would put something around my face, not just standing in the middle of the room looking around. Oh, where is it going to attack me? But anyway, I guess when you are stressed, it's very easy to kind of think these things when you are not actually there.
It is an odd one because, like, you would think, like, if you just threw up an X, like with your arms, would the face hugger be able to kind of just? I mean, would it sort of dissolve the arm? Would it like try to get acid on you to like get? Because we saw like with Kane, like we've seen in quite a number of the films where someone's had a helmet or a faceplate or something like that, and the face hugger's been able to break through. So I guess, I mean, we know the strength of the thing because it basically chokes out Ripley. She's literally moments away from suffocating, I guess, because it can't attach itself to her face, and it takes. And once again, another magical scene where they shoot the glass and Hicks comes barreling through, which has been kind of done a dozen times in different films and whatnot, sort of thing. But yeah, I suppose it kind of shows the strength. But yeah, I suppose you could just kind of try and cover your face with something.
Yeah, it wouldn't last long because eventually they would suffocate you and you would pass out.
Yeah,
But I would still be against the wall. So. Less, because right in the middle of the room, it can come from any direction. It's how my brain. I'm always looking. Whenever I go somewhere, it's always looking for the exit. I can't help it.
Situational awareness for sure.
Yeah.
I did like Gorman's last scene though. Corbin and Vasquez, he does have a bit of redemption there, and the scene of him shooting a pistol at the alien that pops out of the vent and it just kind of bouncing off. And it just flashes. It just because I think if it would be made now, it'd be like this long. We get a 5-minute scene on, and we'd see the alien and just those little it's so much more effective when it's just short bursts.
Yeah. And the actors were great. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I was, once again, it's one of those type of films where I was probably too young when I first watched it, sort of thing. I did think that Vasquez was gonna make it. I thought she was going to be one of the few to get out, sort of thing. But then when they're crawling through the tunnels or the air ducts, sorry, and this, I've just got to say, like, I mean, I don't know how big air ducts are in real life, and I suppose they can throw away the kind of thing that this is a sci-fi film, but damn, those are some big air tunnel or air ducts or whatnot. Like when you can literally just scoot your way through. Yeah, they must have some. Well, I suppose it's an atmosphere processing plant. They have to get air in and stuff like that. So I guess they could argue the case that that's the reason why they're so large, that you could fit people in there and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah, that's a great ending. Well, I'll say it's a good ending for him. I think he changes through that, and I like her little quip at the end. You were always an asshole. Like,
imagine that being the last thing you hear, though, right? Like you always were an asshole, Gorman. Oh, geez, all right, get blown up. Like I'm not expecting some Medal of Honor type soliloquy or anything, but wow, the last word you hear, you're an asshole. Oh.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's from Vasquez. It's a tender thing. It's a courteous type of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's a mark of respect, I guess.
Kind of was, right? It kind of,
He was, yeah, I think so. That she kind of forgave him at the end.
Yeah, I mean,
if she had said, "You are an asshole," that she'd be pissed off. But he said, "You always were." It's that she let go. She kind of forgave him for the death of Drake. His name Drake.
Drake, yeah.
And
I mean, you mentioned it before, Susanna, in the first one, where a lot of people make bad decisions, kind of thing, in the first one, and you could argue that, when the Marines are going into the reactor core sort of thing to find the colonists, and when the shit hits the fan, he's basically on the comms, and he is kind of talking them through things. It's just that with everything going on, there's the one moment where he's talking to Apone and sort of saying to him, fall back with incinerator units, and Apon's like going, what? Effectively, does he get him killed? Maybe, because the sergeant is trying to listen to the commands from. And once again, I think this is the analogy that Cameron was trying to sort of make with the Vietnam War, with the soldiers that are on the front line and being kind of just killed mercilessly by these guerrilla tactics. And that was the whole kind of point of the thing, is these American Marines that got the superior firepower, the airstrikes, the napalm and the thing. But then you have this this other enemy that's using the terrain to their advantage, like hiding underground, so much so sort of thing that they can do sneak attacks and whatnot to the American soldiers. And it's the same thing here. You have this sergeant who's trying to listen to his commander sort of thing, giving him information, but at the same time, he should really be in the situation, i.e., you guys they're coming out of the walls. They're all about just get the hell out of there. And that's effectively when Ripley then takes over with the APC and drives into the reactor, into the sub basement levels and whatnot to get them out, to pull them out. And that's when Vasquez is I think in the original screenplay it was meant to be that the aliens had like a barbed tail, like a scorpion sort of tail, and he's meant to be incapacitated. Gorman originally he gets stabbed by the tail. Whereas in this version, they just have the kind of the cargo in the APC fall on his head, and he has a concussion, whatnot. And you see later on, I don't think he really makes any other decisions than that. But the thing is, he's just bringing them into this hostile environment. Later on, he kind of slips into the background. So apart from just trying to survive, I don't think he really offers much more in a kind of leadership role, I guess. And that's because then Ripley's sort of taking over. So once again, it would be a different story if Gorman sort of became the leader that he never was meant to be, I guess.
And I think, Susanna, we talked about this in one of our character discussions about romance. And I like that Hicks and Ripley have they have some little bit of flirting and this mutual respect, but there's no full-blown romance. I think the most intimate thing they do is tell each other their first names at the end. But I like that about this one too.
You know, I mean, he's always staring at her. You know, there's a lot of eye contact, I guess, and he makes her laugh. And again, like everything, it's a very mature sort of courtship. Let's put it this way: romance, all things considered. Yeah, an an adult romance relationship developing in the harshest conditions.
That should be a meme. Get someone to look at you the way Michael Biehn looks at Sigourney Weaver. Yeah.
Kind of. It's almost too creepy, yeah. But yeah, they trust each other. They realize early on, just with the few words and a few looks, that they can trust each other. They can rely on each other, and that's great.
I did read about the new series that's been, I think they're filming now, but they did bring in the crew that made the aliens in this film for this new series. So a lot of the people who worked on the design and made the costumes are working for the show now, because the new series, I guess, takes place between the first and second film.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm hoping that Colonial Marines come back. I mean, you know, in the kind of franchise of the film, this is the main one where you see them. And I've always I love the technology. Like I used to, when I was younger, they had like a manual. I think it was just called like Aliens, the Colonial Marines manual. It had all the kind of, obviously the production note designs of like all the kind of, but I mean, looking at this as well, like like Cameron, like Ridley Scott, loves the attention to detail of things. If there's something on the wall, it needs to have a purpose, right? It needs to be able to do something. And you see the kind of military type design that he would then later on, I guess, take to Avatar and whatnot with the drop ships and stuff like that. But just like the tactical sort of resourcefulness of it all, like, you know, you have the APC in the drop ship, and the drop ship comes down from the thing, and it's like, comes down literally 5 seconds, you're out. It's that military type precision, and the kind of, you know, the armor, the pulse rifles, the smart guns, the design of the actual LV-426, the Hadley's Hope, like everything in there is just like, it's so great, like in terms of like the technical design and the production design that's going on here. So that in itself as well, like we mentioned before, like, you know, in the first Alien film where the ship isn't essentially a character in itself, I think this is the same thing with Hadley's Hope, and with the actual technical aspects going on here with like the military sort of design, the combat fatigues, the, you know, the armor and everything like that. That's a character way in itself as well. And it's something that I think we just take for granted for now. And it's been, I think, because it's been emulated so much in different films, that you forget that this originality that came from this film as well has kind of been sort of swept into the under the carpet sort of thing. But yeah. And of course the Alien Queen, you know, I mean, like Geiger, you know, hats off to the guy, came up with some magical designs and whatnot. But I think it was Cameron that did the Queen, and you know, thought that there would be this like Queen Bee type thing, and the multi arms, the little dinosaur arms as well, the T-Rex type thing going on. Loved it, and the massive crown. Yeah, brilliant.
I think I read somewhere that, I might be wrong, but I think I read that after this film they ghosted Geiger. Like they didn't ask him to come back for any of the other movies or just help design the creature in the next film. So I think he was pretty salty about that. I think, if I remember right, I think they kind of like pushed him out, which is disappointing.
They don't need him anymore. They had the technology to fake his work, you know, for a fraction of the price and time. Yeah. Which, yeah, it was a shame. But I guess he
It's a
was
sad state
getting
of
old
affairs,
as well. And maybe it was just too much.
Yeah, it's a sad state when, you know, you've kind of created these things, and I guess it's always that, like, if you write something, you write a screenplay, and you know, as the writer, you're not probably going to be on set, sort of thing. You're not going to be asked to come on set, because notoriously in the past, that's always been like the writer would turn around and go like, "Wow, this isn't what," because everything chops and changes so much, and it's interesting as well, like, you know, for a film that glorifies the kind of the guns and whatnot, Sigourney Weaver herself being like a very anti gun person, I think had to be persuaded, you know, to even hold a gun in this one. And it's interesting to kind of see that in the third film, they forego all kinds of, weaponry sort of thing. They go back to basics with like just fire, basically stone, sticks, and fire, which I think is from following on from this, like how could you have made something bigger and badder and better sort of thing than Aliens with all the kind of weaponry on show here? So they kind of notch it back, which I think was a good idea. The execution, unfortunately, depending on who you speak to, didn't go through. I think Alien 3 is a bit of it's the dark horse of the family in that respect. It's the black sheep sort of thing, but also at the same time, it's also really, in its own right, it's a really good film. Once again, Susanna, with the theatrical cut, the director's cut, you can get more of the story from the director's cut. And I think
only that version, because otherwise it makes no sense.
Yeah, it's such a shame that they cut what they cut, sort of thing. I can understand why David Fincher walked away from it at the end and didn't want to have his name on it at all. But once again, we're talking about like production hell and stuff like this. There's some horror stories in Aliens, like the APC. That was a nightmare apparently, like with the roof caving in and like everyone getting the actual facility where they used actually was back where in West London in Acton. Is where they shot a lot of the things. And I was so disappointed to find out later on that I was probably, when did this come out?
1986, I think.
Yeah, I was 3 years old, so I wouldn't have been able to go, just go down and sort of see the shooting and stuff. But born in a different era. I should have been born in a different era. But I love the fact that, they came in and the facility where they had so much asbestos that they had to clean it out, and they actually made the place, that they were shooting a more safer environment. But they probably had to cost thousands, hundreds of thousands to kind of do that. So it's interesting, the little stories, the little tidbits of information that you get from these things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great stuff. I know I'm probably in the minority, but I don't like the final showdown in the show. I think it would have been better for her to fly away and for the settlement to blow up the reactors, and that would have been it. Because I think the whole airlock thing, I don't know. I know they set up the whole loader. I know they set it up early in the film. So I get it, but I don't know. I think we see too much of the Queen in that scene. I think we get too close, and I don't know. It's too. I don't know. I think it would have been better without it. But I wonder if that was to set up another film somehow. But
I think it was kind of to follow the same or the similar structure to Alien that they had. I think originally it was supposed to end with her just getting into the shuttle with the cat and that's it, and then leave the question, was the alien inside with her or not, and then they added that bit, and I think it was the same, and I think they wanted to show off the Queen, and they wanted to they introduced the what's it called, that machine that she wears, the power loader, yes, right in the beginning for that purpose. I think I love the scene. It was good to have that fight, an actual fight, and of course there's always why do they have to blow up into space? It's always the same ending. I guess it's part of the franchise now. It's like so many different ways to do things, but yeah, okay, let's go with it. I didn't buy that, her arm didn't snap with all that weight, but it's my only complaint. But okay, other than that, that's fine.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the end fight between Ripley and the power loader and the alien queen is an iconic scene. It's such a great scene. I do agree with you, Steve, that I think they maybe show too much of the monster. Not as bad as the first one, where as soon as you see it dangling in space, it's a guy in a suit sort of thing. This is all puppeteering and stuff like that, and you've seen like later films like Aliens vs Predator, where you see like a CGI version of it and stuff like that, and it's a lot more dangerous in that respect. The one bit that always irritates me is when she falls into the airlock and that just opens a door into space, because that's it. Because I think everything leading up to it has been so sort of anchored in sort of sci-fi realism. It just feels at that point when she opened, even when I was watching it for the first time and whatnot, I was thinking, I don't think this would actually happen. I know it's really strange to say that in this kind of sci-fi film, but like, when you have like so much realism, so much gritty realism to certain things, to kind of see something so unequivocally absurd, it just kind of detaches you a little bit from it. It's like there's no way you could just open a door into space and just be like, yeah, I'm just going to hang on. He's got me by my leg, but I'm okay. I'm going to pull myself up. Like, no. But once again, like, yeah, it's just one of those kind of little bugbears in a almost like perfect sort of film. It's something that, you know, you can nitpick at and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Does your dog agree or disagree, Susanna?
He wants to go outside.
Oh, okay.
So getting restless. That's okay.
So anything else you guys can think of for this one?
No, I mean it's still one of my favorite movies ever. I think it's near perfect. I don't know that there's no such thing as perfection, but the pace, the cinematography, the acting, the writing, it was really well done, and yeah, it never gets old. I still enjoyed watching it last night. I've watched it, I don't know, 15, 20 times. I lost count.
Oh yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those ones that I can depend. It doesn't matter what kind of time, day, week it is. Like I can always watch Aliens. I've probably watched it hundreds of times now. Once again, like we said before, it's one of those type of films that you can sort of try and sort of look for any kind of new little thing on each kind of viewing. But yeah, depending on who you speak to, is this the superior sequel? Is Aliens better than Alien? Matter of preference, I guess, of what you like, how you feel, what mood you're in. It's one of those type of things where you can probably go on YouTube and like watch the kind of behind the scenes, and you'll be enthralled for hours just to kind of find out so many minute details. Once again, production house, a James Cameron gig, right? So there's going to be like stories to tell. You know, Bill Paxton, R.I.P., but like, you know, one of the best performances of his career. Just, yeah, I don't know why Michael Biehn's not been in more things. It should, like, yeah, just great characters, great story. Sets it up like, you know, where do you go from here? If we were back in 1986 and we just saw that and it was like, wow, where are they going to take this next? Yeah, it just had a lot of potential, and it just, I guess this is where the decline happens now, where depending once again who you speak to, we can see, you know, Ripley's journey. Like we've seen her, like Sarah Connor, who was a waitress in the first film, The Terminator, became this like badass hero that so many people have been inspired by. You know, iconic characters, iconic sets, iconic scenes, iconic design.
Definitely, I think it peaked at Aliens and you can't really compare Alien and Aliens. Watching them again so close, it's completely different type of movie for a completely different mood, and they are both very good in their own genres, their own types.
I'm sure the idea has been sort of like it's been sent out there, but I've never understood why they haven't, like with all kind of spin-off shows, and like we've seen the kind of future movies and whatnot, and now a TV show, and there's going to be another film and set whatever. I don't understand why they've never gone down the route of like having this kind of like the Bad Bunch or something like that, like having this ragtag Colonial Marines series. You know, with the computer games that you have out, sort of Alien versus Predator sort of thing. You know, people could play as the Marines and stuff like that, and everyone loved that. I've just never understood why they've never greenlit a kind of Colonial Marine show. Even the Dark Horse comics have had their kind of run with Colonial Marines as well. It's great. People resonate towards it. We want to see more iconic characters in this kind of vein. You know, moving forward, as I was saying, like before, I think in the original, in the Alien podcast, the one we did, you know, Amanda Ripley, even though in this film we find out that she died as an old lady, there's a character there that, you know, shares the bloodline with Ellen Ripley, and it's like, you know, I don't understand why they don't sort of go down that route sort of thing. Like maybe you could have Amanda Ripley team up with some more. I know it might be tried and tested ground. It's just like, are you just rehashing the same thing again? I don't care. I'd watch that. Yeah, definitely. You know, give me, here's my money. I will watch that. Definitely. Stuff like that. I don't understand why they don't go down that route, but anyhow.
Something just occurred to me. So the Hadley's Hope explodes, right? So the settlement explodes at the end. Did the derelict ship get destroyed, or is it still there?
It depends on how far out it is. I always assumed that the derelict ship was so far off the range. That's why you had the kind of mum and pop team with Newt's parents, like going so far out. I mean, he doesn't Bishop say like the explosion's like 10 megatons or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a physicist. I don't
I
know
think
what
it was
kind
a
of
30
range is.
kilometer radius or something like that.
So I don't know
I
how.
always assumed that it stayed there. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, because that would be an interesting concept, like to come back to LV-426, but instead of the ruined remains of Hadley's Hope, which they've. I mean, I suppose it's canon now because it's in the game, but they go back to Hadley's Hope and it's still there. Yeah, it's a bit weird, but yeah, no, I think that would be a good one. See the derelict ship, because we know there's thousands of eggs there still and stuff. So
Just waiting.
just waiting.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So I guess I hope we can talk Alien 3 assembly cut and not the theatrical. Is everybody okay?
I think that's the way we go. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Whew, okay.
I mean, we can talk about both as well, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Sort of thing. So, yeah.
To have a comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing Alien 3 in the theater, and that was a rough one. But I think so we'll get into that next week. But awesome. So in the meantime, thanks both of you for hanging out. It's one of my favorites too. So it's great to find people to nerd out about it with. It's always a good time. Anthony, where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Horrible, and you can find my books, Birthday Treat and Catbox on Amazon.
Well, Susanna.
You can find me on X or Page Chewing forums, and my books pretty much everywhere. Weird Gods is the first, and Anachrony, a novella in between the series, is now free on my YouTube, the YouTube channel Den of the Weird, till the end of the month, so check it out.
Oh, cool. And you can find me on pagechewing.com, and all the links will be down in the description below. So until next time, we will talk to everyone soon.
Thank you.
Bye.